To be my guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary. And my very special guest, I'm really excited about this interview today, is with Brian Cleary from the United States, but I presume originally Brian from Ireland.
Yes.
There you go. Now,
County Wexford, the model
Wexford.
Yeah. Yeah.
This Brian is an Irish dancing teacher, but with a completely different organisation to mine. And when I say completely different, we both teach Irish dancing. We both, our organisations love the Irish culture, but they're two different organisations. One I have to say I don't know a whole lot about, but I'm going to learn today. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Mary. Thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here.
And hello to Hamish also.
Hamish is my dog. He'll probably present himself, you know. He likes to be in the middle of everything, so I have no doubt that he'll wander in and out during the
Hamish is an amazing creature.
Yes.
What breed is he, by the way?
He's a standard poodle.
Standard poodle. He's quite big.
He is, and he's sort of unusual because he's red. Most of the poodles are black or white or...
That's right, yeah.
A mix, so... Anyway, Hamish has a life of his own.
He's an Irish poodle.
He is.
Okay, Brian, firstly, tell me about yourself.
I started out dancing initially with Commission and then with Cobol, and then became a founder member of CRN, which stands for Cumann Rince Náisúnta.
Yeah.
And I was in Ireland at the time in my early 20s. And then I moved to the States. Don't age myself too much, Mary, but I've been in the States almost at that stage in life where I've spent 30 years in Ireland and 30 years in the States. So I'm at a new transition. Yeah. So I did my teachers. I danced very briefly with Commission. Then I spent most of my time dancing with Cobol, did my teachers with Cobol, and then started CRN and did my adjudicators with CRN. And now I'm an old person, so I'm an honorary member of CRN. So again, CRN stands for Cumann Rince Náisúnta.
But you're very young to be an honorary member of CRN.
Well, I think it's partly because we're not, I suppose we're considered a new organization, but we're actually coming up on our 40th anniversary. It's in 2 years' time.
Funny, isn't it, when you call yourselves new?
I know,
40 years.
I know, but you know, that's how it is. I mean, the Commission has been going for a long time.
Yeah,
but
forever.
at the same time, you know, 50 or 60 or 70 years is sort of...
Yeah.
It's a lot in one way.
Dr. John Cumann, it came in with the flood.
Exactly.
So we've been...
We have to agree on which flood.
Flood, yeah. but the thing is, I mean, 40 years is a mighty long time.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose I think the thing that's true, and Mary, you can tell me if it's true for you or not, but I think most people when they're in dance and they're in one of the organizations, generally they go through the protocol of that organization. They dance through the different grades and dance through the different ages, and they sort of stay loyal. And they go on to be, they may do their teachers or the adjudicators, or they may not, but they tend to do it within that organization.
Yes.
So,
although I believe Terry did his AD with Kogol, from what from what I thought he said to me that day. I think it was Terry. Philip did it with Commission, but Terry did it with Kogol and then transferred over to Commission. So I think he took the same trajectory as you, or both of them did. They were Commission, Kogol, and CRN. Yeah,
I think Philip and Terry are sort of around the same age. We're in our early 40s.
Yeah, I know. You're not, but COVID has actually stunted all of our growth and our age.
Yeah,
none of us are going to get any older.
But this is actually, one of the nice things about what you're doing is that, there are all these organizations and we tend to be isolated, but it's actually nice to hear about each other and to see each other in a collegial way rather than in a competitive way. Because I think, and it's one of the things about CRN, is that I believe that there's enough room for everybody. Yes,
there absolutely is. I mean, I've never understood. I personally have not understood. I would never be. I'll have to be honest. I could never be anything other than on Commission, because it's what I was brought into. It's what I was brought up in. My parents were, that's what they signed me up on. And then in the 70s, 60s, 70s, the split came.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be with the schools that were, I suppose, Commission and remained Commission. But for the grace of God, it could have gone another way. I could have ended up being with a school that decided to stay with An Kogol. Because Dr. John was telling me that in the beginning, everybody was both Kogol and Commission, and you were part of both. And you paid registration to on Commission, and you were with on Kogol, and then the split came, and most of Limerick stayed together and went with Commission. Cork split, and he said there were families that fell out because some went Kogol and some went Commission. All of Limerick went Commission. But it's interesting. I've never understood division as the product, I suppose, of a mixed marriage parents, and I've never understood division.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that, as I said, I think that there's enough space for all of the organizations. I think where the CRN focus is really on education. So we have an open platform, which means that anybody can dance on it. But at the same time, we can't dance. Well, but that's as a result of your organisation rather than,
But there's some fesh up the country. I can't think of the name of it right now, but that I believe has open platform up in Belfast.
Right. And I really admire, I may get this name incorrectly, but I've always admired in the festival dancers in Northern Ireland, either Belfast or Derry, because they've always held an open platform, I believe, and they've always held to a tradition. And, I think when you look back on our history, we fought very hard for our language and we fought very hard for our culture. And I think that it's a discredit to our culture to have division. I don't mind different organizations, but I think we should be talking to each other. I think we should be friends. And I think we all have the same crazy passion and addiction to dance.
And it is an addiction. But I do think that, as you said there, Brian, this, in a strange sort of sense, and I hate that phrase, we're separate, we're closer together. It keeps coming out in adverts on our TV. separate, we were closer together because of this COVID. But
Right.
in a strange way, we have become closer together because we have been forced out of our comfort zone to speak to people about their lives who we probably never knew existed. We knew CRN, we knew WIDA, we knew on Kogol and all and festival and all of that. But I don't know, and I know my best friend's daughter, when her teacher went back to Kogol, Charlotte ended up dancing Kogol. But apart from that, I didn't know anybody with Kogol.
Right. Yeah.
And now I know one person with CRN.
Yes. Well, hopefully you'll know more. But I think one of the gifts of Riverdance was that, although it started out sort of with Jean Butler and Michael Flatley, who were predominantly commissioned dancers.
Yeah.
Once all of that developed, they needed dancers. They needed senior dancers. And then when they developed the different shows and they traveled internationally, they had to draw on Kogol, they had to draw on CRN and WIDA and the rest of them for senior dancers. And it brought those together.
I wouldn't be able to pick out a WIDA or a CRN dancer in the shows.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's...
Do you want me to tell you a little about CRN, kind of what we do and what's different and what's the same and what our goals are?
Yeah, what exactly are your the goals of CRN?
Well, the open platform was one of the big things. We wanted to have any child, even young adults, senior dancers, to be able to dance on a platform without any restrictions. I guess the only restriction we had was you had to pay your entry fee, but if you could do that, you could dance. And the second thing was education. We felt that there was a tremendous push for fashion or for competition and not enough sort of focus on culture and education and understanding of what it meant to have dance as part of our culture that included a sort of an appreciation of Irish music and an appreciation of Irish language. The other thing we did was, the truth is that there are many people who go to an Irish dance class, and I think all teachers are doing the best they can, but there's no, at that time we felt there was no formal structure and training. Okay. So one of the things we did when we started CRN, it was kind of an opportunity to try new things, and we developed a structure that was somewhat like the Academy of Music or like ballet, where everybody had to have at least certain requirements. And our exam is pretty difficult. It's much like the commission one, but the things you're asked to do are a little different. You're required to have particular steps and work so that every teacher has at least a foundation and every child comes out dancing with particular steps. So I think where the other organizations might have some of that would be around their St. Patrick's Day, their Job at Journey Work, the traditions.
Yeah.
But we felt that children can dance and love it, but there's only one world champion under 19 or under 18 or whatever. But behind that world champion, under that age group, there are thousands of other dancers. And it can be disheartening. And so we introduced things like, as well as having an All-Ireland, within the All-Ireland we had a graded system. And we introduced what we call a prix douche, which is a Premier Year award. So as well as having an All-Ireland champion at sort of doing advanced work, we would have somebody in beginners, and they would be evaluated over a period of time. They would have to qualify for this competition across the world. So you'd have kids coming in from Australia, kids coming in from America.
At beginner level? At the
beginner level. And they all competed against each other, almost like it was an All-Ireland.
So an All-Ireland beginner.
An All-Ireland beginners, yeah. And it created this sort of enthusiasm and created...
that's interesting.
Yeah, because I danced with Ita Cadwell, who was one of the founders of
Yeah.
CRN.
Yeah.
And we danced in Mountjoy Square, in Mountjoy Square in Dublin. And beside us was Matt Malidi and Mary Duffy teaching
That's
within
right.
Shalga.
Gosh.
So, I mean, we're going back a bit here, but, you know, the schools were right beside each other. And Ita Cadwell had lots of champions in commission, in Kogol and in CRN. And she always said, you know, with champions, it's not a bad thing to actually step out of a competition now and again. To just give other kids a chance, to let the person who's getting second get a few championships. Now, maybe not the world championship.
I don't think that'll happen too easily.
Well, I don't expect them to step out of the world championships, Mary, but you get the idea that sort of you do want to keep people interested in their culture, and you do want to keep them excited, you know. So what else have we done that's different? We've introduced a Cayley book, because most of the organizations depended on the commission book, which was great, you know, the 3 different volumes that you guys had.
I know.
So we have a new book.
I wanted to burn mine after my ADCRG exam. And I thought, no, I'll just keep it as a souvenir to suffering.
Yeah, I know most of us still have trauma attached to it.
Post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, exactly.
You would have it.
Right. And I think, you know, we're small enough at the moment that, and when I say small, you know, there's up to probably 200 teachers throughout the world.
Okay, yeah, it is small.
But it's growing constantly, and we're not out proselytizing, you know, trying to create, because we want to keep a kind of attitude towards dance that includes kind of sportsmanship, really, you know. And
much needed. It's much needed in all walks of life today.
Yes,
I think
yeah.
sportsmanship, and not just
competitors. When people think of CRN, there's sometimes they can say, "Well, isn't that the group that do the traditional dancing?" And that's actually something we would like, but it's not actually true. We do have these different grades, you know, where we expect people to dance particular things, but then we have modern work that's developed as well, and we have all those crazy costumes, and we have all the wigs, and we have all the sparkle and the glitter and the glamour. But the focus is slightly different in the sense that, you know, if they're playing a set dance, let's say Rodney's Glory, or they're playing...
There's one I haven't heard now in a while, except for the exams, Rodney's Glory.
It's a lovely piece of music.
Isn't it beautiful?
Or The Downfall of Paris is another one that I love.
Downfall of Paris, yeah, but there's such lovely sets that you don't, I think they go through a period of a secular progression, because all it takes is one really good dancer to come out and do a Rodney's Glory, and suddenly it's popular again. You know, because I do find a lot now, it tends to be a few set dances, and ones like Sushin Bon or Youghal Harbour, or sets like that Ace and Joseph Pipering, those you don't hear, or you don't see anybody dancing, and they're really beautiful. Fiddler Around the Fairy Tree is a nice little set for a young child.
It is short,
but for a child, you know, that
it's brilliant.
To a set. Don't hear it. Don't hear anybody do it.
Right.
You know. And
well, when I was dancing, I mean, there was really you didn't. Maybe my memory is faulty, but you really didn't dance Downfall or Kilkenny or Planxty Davis until you were in senior.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't. Not at those speeds and not at the lengths.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, I think one of the things that's not good about our dancing is that we've been disrespectful to the music. And I think we have an obligation to keep the time signatures and the rhythms
Okay.
in an identifiable way, so that if it's a jig, actually, we don't turn it into something else. If it's a hornpipe, it's danced in a hornpipe.
I have to agree with you in the sense that I personally like to see a hornpipe, and a child doing a hornpipe that is clearly and definably a hornpipe, and the same with slip jig.
Yeah.
Not a real masquerading as a slip jig. No bins.
Yeah.
They're clearly two different dances, or four different dances, if you like.
Right.
And I do like to see that, but I love the modern interpretation of traditional music. I love it.
Yeah. You know, and I think some of the world champions are sort of like Olympic athletes. They're just magnificent. I mean, obviously they're practicing night and day. They're in and out of their dance classes, and they're, you know, to get to that level, I won't say you're being murdered because of all the laws nowadays about one thing or another, but it's sort of a joint effort between the teachers and the parents and the money involved. And they're just, I mean, they're like thoroughbred racehorses that they have to hit form on the day. They're just splendid.
That's it. And you could have a child who could be, you could watch them today and you could think, or last week, and you could think, geez, they're stunning, absolutely stunning. And today they could come up in front of you and you're expecting them to be the same. And you forget that they're human beings. They come up in the stage and one day they're completely on form. Another day, for some reason or other, they're not. And it might be, it might be any number of reasons that's actually brought them off form. And you're looking at a different child on the stage and you're saying to yourself that I've seen them before and they've danced a whole lot better than they are today, or they've never danced as well as they are today.
Right.
You know,
I think that's a credit to you personally, though, Mary, because it means that you're actually judging the child on the day rather than letting them win on their reputation.
Yeah, I'm very much on the day.
Yeah, and I think that's something that across the board, sort of people have said, our parents have felt that kids sometimes didn't get a fair shot.
We all felt. I mean, even in competition, I mean, there were times when I won and I thought, and you come off the stage and you think, I thought I made a mistake, or I thought I wasn't good today. And my mother would say, will you be quiet? As I practically say it into the judge's face, I didn't think I was good. Great today. And then another time I'd feel incredibly hard done. But you'd have to smile. I think it's so important that children are taught, and I think for the most part, children are very good in competition to cover up when they're disappointed.
Well, I think our dancers are a better example than our teachers and our organizations, because across the board, what I've noticed is that the dancers are friends with each other. It doesn't make any difference where they're from.
They are. Or
who they're affiliated with.
They don't even have half the time we went up, and I don't think we thought we were competing at all. We were just going up dancing.
Right. Yeah. And you didn't, I mean,
our parents had those expectations for us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, part of the joy was actually participating. And if you were a champion, well, you were kind of used to winning. Yeah. But at the same time, people didn't dislike each other in any way. Or at least, you know, I think so things have changed. And I think that was one of the things about CRM, is to try and keep that.
I think Brian, Irish dancing shows, whatever organisation you belong to, they show their true colours when the chips are down. And you see here with COVID-19 and that, how united people are, and people who you might have seen at a feis just passing by, and you might have imagined they were all so powerful as dancing teachers, such wonderful teachers, such successful teachers. And through these interviews, I've found, I've been able, I suppose, to see the humanity behind the teachers,
right?
The human beings, the people who are there for you when you need them.
Yes, and I think you know, I don't know if it's an Irish saying or not, but the idea that dunghills rise and castles fall.
Castles fall, yeah.
And I think that's true in Irish dance particularly, because I've seen, I won't name any of the schools because you always leave somebody out, but you see fabulous schools and they win their solos and they've world championships and they have magnificent teams. But eventually the school changes and somebody else comes up, another school comes into it, and
better and more current, obviously.
Yeah, more current, and you have to sort of allow for that. You're not going to be top dog all of the time.
But still, as this, and we're sticking with the metaphors here. Cream will always rise to the top, because you can have the new broom or the new people coming in, and they're doing all sorts of exciting things with hands and movements,
right.
and sometimes it's the traditional 8-hand reel or whatever, or hand called cap or cross reel, for want of something better to say, and they can just do it so traditionally and so beautifully on stage, and no bells and whistles, just pure clean and beautiful in its simplicity.
Right. Well, I do have a pet peeve, Mary.
What? Go on. Tell us.
I think that, when you're developing work, you have a responsibility to what's already been established.
Yeah. Bring it along. But
yeah, exactly. So, for example, when Riverdance came along, it sort of revolutionized the opportunities for senior dancers to stay in dancing and to earn a living from it. But then everybody said, I have to put my hands in the air. Teachers all over the place, all over the world, putting their hands in the air. Now, I think it behooves every dance teacher to take a ballet class, or to take a jazz class, or to take a modern class, and learn that there's such a thing as port de bras, that there's a place where your hands are supposed to be, and sticking them up in the air isn't being modern. It's sort of been, it's like bad timing or bad execution or something, that I think when you develop work, you have to develop off what's already established rather than do makey-uppy stuff. Yeah. No other word for it.
Yeah, no. You have to. John and I, Dr. John Cumann and myself were talking about that. It's being true to the traditional. It's like having a building, and you have a very old architectural building, and you're building onto it. Many people will try to make the new building look exactly like the old, whereas conservationists will say, leave the old old and have the new. And you're reading the history of the building. So when someone comes along later on and adds to that building, you can see the tapestry of ages of the stone structure. And the movement, I suppose, of the design. It's the same, I suppose, what you're saying with dancing. Bring the traditional with you, but make it obvious that you have the tradition within this contemporary. Yeah.
And I suppose, one of the goals, obviously, if CRN started as a separate organization, is to sort of try and stay separate.
Yeah.
Because if we all have world champions, I mean, what's the difference between us all? And I suppose the metaphor of building is the one I would steal from you for the moment.
You could take it away.
I would like to sort of see CRN sort of having a preservation. It's like a building. I'd like to have the front of the building with a preservation order on it.
That's exactly it.
And I'd like to see the back of it. You can put in your computers, you can put in your...
I'm glad my metaphor wasn't lost in you, Brian.
Exactly. But, the facade is the facade of the building is respecting the history. And then once you walk into the building, you develop. One of the things you said that caught my attention was around COVID-19, because I don't know how you guys are doing around the idea of keeping dancers involved. It's very hard to...
Very hard, Brian. It's very hard. There's so many leaving. There's so many talks of people leaving, and the teachers saying that dancers are just getting despondent and giving up. And, Zoom is wonderful, until it isn't.
Yeah.
And this was not our intention to do our shows via Zoom. We have a vMix system, which is music. We can use music, and it's like being in a Fox or a CNN news studio. It's real flashy, but we can't use it because we can't get started. So I thought, let's do it on Zoom. It's wonderful until the sound goes or somebody is out of sync. And it's the same if you're looking at a child dancing, you're going to have to inevitably, if you do competitions via Zoom, the music could be out of sync with the steps. How do you know who's out of time?
Yeah.
Is the system out, or is it the dancer? And we are, as human beings, I think we are people, if you like. I think we need to be physically around people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's been an issue. It's been an issue in CRN as well, just to keep the dancers involved and keep them interested in the work. And so we brainstormed for a lot of, because the Zoom, you're absolutely right about the Zoom. It's a nice way of staying in touch, but if you go beyond a group, it sometimes doesn't work. So one of the things we've done, one of the things we've done is we've introduced a new exam system, and that the kids can actually work on at home. So, for example, if you let's say you're a champion dancer, and in 2 years' time you want to do your teachers. So what we've introduced is a way that the dancers can, when you do your exam with CRN, you have to, even though you're a dancer and you're a champion, you have to go back and dance all the grades just like you do. Did.
Yeah.
But now what we're doing is we're introducing an exam system, and you can, once you send in your video and you're reviewed by the exam panel, you're given a cert in that particular grade and dance.
Okay.
Those certs are now going towards your teachers, so that when you apply for your teachers, you no longer have to repeat that part.
Okay.
And it's kept the dancers who are, wobbly, the ones who are sort of thinking about their teachers, are sort of not motivated. Where am I going to be dancing? So I don't need to practice. So we've actually, it's very difficult. So it's been very helpful to have developed that graded system that we had.
That's nice. That's a good idea, Brian.
Yeah.
Basically, you get them to video themselves doing that particular grade. It's sent in then, and you grade them on it. Now, what happens? I presume all the music is in sync with.
It is. Yeah. It's no longer enough to be an Irish dancer. You have to be a computer technician. But the nice thing about it is it gets the mother or father in there, with the wavy camera. But at least as long as the music is in time, it's great.
You would want to have a few drinks the night before and on the cameras, you wouldn't.
Exactly, because for us, we're not having any fesh until everything is cancelled until after Christmas.
No, I run a fesh every September, the last weekend in September. And I hung on because I'd be very loyal to, I suppose, the people that I have, as we all would be, to the people that we have doing the work, like, say, Brian Hoban, Linda Ball, she's an adjudicator as well. Her husband does the stage for me. And Connor Holmes would medals and trophies, and Mairead Hackett, Mairead is a teacher as well. She does my sashes and pens. And I was like tearing my hair out. How am I going to tell these people that my fesh is, and so just dragging it out. And eventually I had to say, look, and part of it was taken out of my hands because the hall said that they weren't allowing anybody in. So I thought, but I still didn't want to let people down, but it had to be done.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And I think people, certainly in America, because I live in San Francisco, people are a little stir crazy, but they're not unreasonable.
Yeah.
And they want to stay well. They would like to be going out, they'd like to be involved in things, but at the same time, in the long run, they'd prefer to be healthy.
But I was, I don't know if you know of Miriam O'Callaghan. She's a journalist here in Ireland. Well, she has a program, and there was a psychiatrist on last night, a top psychiatrist, and she was asking him, did he think the pubs should open? And without even blinking, he said, absolutely. And he was talking about the detrimental effect it's having on the elderly and on those living on their own. And he said, there's, far worse than the thoughts of the COVID is the feeling of isolation. He said pubs are far more than just places that you go to drink. Many people, farmers, they just go there for someone to talk to.
Right.
For familiar surroundings. And he said there's many telling me that they no longer want to live.
Yeah.
And that to me was what I've been saying all along. There's, you've got to think of people's mental states as well, particularly the elderly.
Yeah.
And now the young, right. The young people don't know what to do with themselves.
So my work outside of dance is as a clinical and forensic psychologist.
Oh, I know that, Brian. But do you agree with him?
Oh, I absolutely agree with him, because I think the biggest disease in America is loneliness. Ever before COVID-19. And I think with the level of isolation now, particularly people who live alone, it's hard to put a name on loneliness. It comes across in different ways, but it's a huge issue. And while it's not in what we call the DSM, which is the medical journal, it's the issue that's coming into our practices all the time now.
Yeah.
And I had a woman that I sort of grew up with, and she had kids dancing.
He's behind you.
Pardon? Oh, he is. Can you see him? This is Hamish.
Hamish, you're magnificent.
Hello there.
Oh, look at that. Hamish. Oh, what a fabulous looking guy.
Open the door so he can do his thing. Or maybe he doesn't. But anyhow, this lady, she danced, her children danced through the different age groups, and they all eventually left Irish dancing. And she called me and she said, I really miss the feshes. Even though my husband used to say, why are you going to feshes every weekend? It was really her social outlet. It was her way of being in contact with other people. And now that her kids were all grown, she's sort of at a loose end. And eventually one of her daughters became pregnant, and they're back in Irish dancing. And she is back in the thick of her friends and the energy and all the things that are positive about Irish dance.
Well, it's funny. As I said at the start of this, it's either lately I've been interviewing either Holocaust survivors or Irish dancing teachers. My research was in childhood under Nazism and literature about childhood. And I've interviewed a lot of survivors, and one in particular struck me because of her passion, her absolute passion for Irish dancing. She's a French woman, and she was in hiding during World War II as a child, and she said that her passion, she went everywhere with her granddaughter Megan. She's Megina now in Hebrew, and she went everywhere to the Feshna with her, and she was a champion dancer as well. Mm-hmm. And now she's living in a home with all other people. They all have their own homes within this village, but right. they can't leave the village because of COVID. And I said to her, in a strange way, do you think that your survival of World War II equipped you for this isolation? And she said, mm-hmm. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
She said, that's probably exactly why it doesn't really bother me, she said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to cope on my own because I had to be on my own for so long.
Right, yeah. And I think finding a passion in life is wonderful, because it keeps you young. And I think one of the things that's true about all our organizations is that the women teachers in our organizations are very glamorous.
Yeah, well.
They just turn out well, and they're interested in their appearance because they the dancers are turned out well.
Well, we did talk about that one day, about how, you know, Irish dancing keeps you young in a sense, because you have to keep fit, relatively fit, and you have to keep up for your students.
Right. And even the devilment keeps you going, Mary.
Yeah. The laugh, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But you were in San Francisco. Michael Dillon, I know, is in San Francisco.
Right.
Don't know, do you know Michael? And he's with us on commission, and Maura Clerkin.
Right. You have a big, quite a number of commission teachers. You have Keneally School.
Patricia Keneally. I interviewed Patricia.
Yeah. You have the Murphys.
Yeah.
You have just two sisters. I'm trying to think of their names. I'd be murdered now. Mary, you got me on the spot now. Can't leave anybody out. But they're the.
Oh, are you talking about the Petrys?
No, they're on the East Coast.
They're in the East Coast, yeah.
I'm talking about just San Francisco.
Okay. Can't think offhand now myself, but we'll put it up on Facebook.
The Whelans.
Oh, the Whelans.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Glad you thought of that.
Yeah, and I'm just covering myself here by saying I'm staying within the Bay Area. So this
Bay Area, yeah. Michael, I know Michael is in the Spanish or the Hispanic side of San Francisco.
Probably the Mission District.
I think that's where Michael is.
Yeah.
And Maura Clerkin is in San Francisco as well. Maura is fabulous. I interviewed her as well the other day. And Michael was the first interview I did.
Oh, cool.
It was his usual spectacular. Mad about Michael Dillon. He left Ireland. He's from Clare, but Kilkishen. But great loss actually to Irish dancing here in Munster, because his ideas are legendary, especially around running competitions. I certainly learned little things from Michael. And Terry and Philip sure are out. They're in Florida, aren't they?
Yeah, I lost contact with them recently. Sometimes they'll contact me. If they judge a lot, I think.
That I'm interviewing you anyway.
Pardon?
They're delighted I'm interviewing you. They said it to me on Facebook. Oh my God, he's our friend.
All right, yeah, and we've been friends for a long time, and they've been in the middle of Irish dance all along, I think.
Yeah.
And they've been in many places, and throughout America. So I'm trying to keep a track of the two of them.
Yeah, they're in Florida anyway now. Philip loves the heat. Terry doesn't. So.
I suppose that's what keeps things going. The
dogs love the heat. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But mine, jeepers, it's so cold here and so wet and so miserable. I don't feel remotely sorry that when you complain about the heat.
Right. Yeah. Well, go ahead, Mary. Sorry.
No. We were talking about the open platforms, and I know Niall O'Leary brought up a question on Michael Dillon's page about the open platforms, and I was asking everybody. But, I was talking to Dr. John about it, and he was saying, and it's my reservation, because we're all so big, how would you ever cope with having a one world champion? Because our organizations individually are all so big, and you're dealing with, let's face it, we're dealing with people, creative people who have egos. We all have egos about dancing and that, and how would you propose?
Well, I don't think
solving that problem.
I suppose for me, it doesn't have to be that specific, Mary.
Yeah.
I think to start off with, we just need to not change anything except say you can dance. Now, when I think of the commission, I think of if I was to describe a commission dancer, I would think of somebody who was very elegant, very swift, with a nice line and good execution and time and rhythm, but flying like the hammers of hell, from one end of the stage to the other. When I look at them, they're just like race horses. They're just magnificent. And then I think of, the festival dancers. And
they're vastly different.
Completely different, and completely different style, but really elegant slipchicks.
Very slow.
Very simple, very basic. Like you were talking earlier about something that's traditional but beautifully executed. You put the two on the stage and they're very different. It doesn't mean that one is necessarily better or worse. I don't think we have to compete, but we have to talk to each other. And I think that's the starting point. I think each organisation is still going to be loyal to its own organisation, and they're going to have their world championships. But I think much like governments, I think the organisations are behind, the dancers in terms of keeping up.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. But do you think that it's too big, say, to have a joint organization, or not a joint organization, but to have an open platform where, for instance, our World Championship goes on for the bones of 4 days.
Right.
You had CRN and you had Cogall and you had Festival all joined up with that. Jesus, go on for about 2 weeks.
Well, not necessarily, because they would have to qualify just like they do in commission. You can't just enter the world, you have to qualify.
Yeah, I know, but one would presume there'd be more people qualifying, unless you would suggest that they cut down on the numbers of qualifiers.
Well, I would come at it in a slightly different way. I don't think this will ever happen, but for example, in our World Championships, in CRN World Championships, I would like to see a guest adjudicator. A dark horse, somebody who knows nobody, who's a qualified adjudicator, and the other 7 or other 5 adjudicators, there'd be one less, but that would be made up by a visiting judge.
Yeah.
And because one of the problems, and one of the things that, we might as well be honest here, people have said there are certain things go on, and people are winning on their reputations, and people are taking care of each other, and there's this and there's that, and you can believe it's true or it's not true. But if you have a dark horse of a judge who knows nobody, they have to sit down and they have to judge the dancer on the day, just like you said you do.
Yeah, and I think for the most part people do. I would like to think people do. But we brought in for this thing in our organisation, which is an association rule, that you cannot judge anybody that you say, for instance, that I was in your class last week and I was sitting down, or I was in your class and I saw your dancers and they were coming up in front of me. I wouldn't be allowed to judge those dancers. But
right.
Now I had somebody on, I had Gary Healy on, who was saying that the association rule for him stifles his ability to run a business, or anyone's ability to run Irish dancing as a business. Now, we don't all run our Irish dancing as businesses, because you'd never make money out of it. Certainly not when there's loads of dancing teachers in an area. But in places like America, you could arguably make money out of Irish dancing, and teachers do run it as a business. So they feel that some feel that it's preventing them from being able to run their business successfully, because they're stifled by the fact that, they can't judge a feis if they did a workshop for somebody.
Right.
I mean, there is the argument that it does stifle.
Yeah.
But there's also the argument that you have to show a sense of decorum and show, and as an organisation, and show we are doing everything to appear honest and create this image of honesty. But at the end of the day, doesn't it all come down to a person's own integrity?
It comes down to your ethics.
And ethics, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the ways that, we're small enough that we can actually look at judging and make sure you just know that it's honest. And I think the way when you get bigger to handle that is actually for the organization, the executive or whatever you call your governing body, is to have rules and regulations and to actually be able to say, this result looks a little dodgy and
what they do, we have what they call a Costa Farah. Yeah. And the Costa Farah is at all the major competitions, particularly the Worlds and All Irelands, and they're watching the competitions, so they see, and you can complaints can be lodged and things like that, and then the Costa Farah oversee it. But ideally, in an ideal world, people should be able to judge every child, and people should be honest.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of the
right time knowing you've done the best you can.
Exactly. Yeah. I think one of the disadvantages of Irish dance is that it's not like boxing or swimming. There's a very clear winner. You can swim the fastest, and everybody agrees you got to the finish. It's not like race horsing where the horse passes the line. You are depending on people's opinion and on judges' integrity and on performing well on the day. So it's a very
subjective.
Yeah, a very difficult process, and you do have to trust people's integrity. And I think one of the ways around that is, again, being much more particular about how judges are trained. And I don't have to agree with your opinion, but I do expect you to be able to defend it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, our assessment for our judging exam is notoriously deep and notoriously difficult process. It's probably, I would have done 2 PhDs quicker than I would have done. It's the stress, it's the just having to justify your results, which is great when you have it done and you've come over the other side. You appreciate how difficult it was.
Right.
Not so when you're actually doing the exam and you think, oh God, just be nice to me. But once you're at the other side, you say to yourself, absolutely, I understand why they're so rigorous. And you don't appreciate it there, but you do appreciate it there. And but it's just I do think that there should be no need for an association rule. If people felt,
how do you mean?
No, we have the association rule, but ideally, in an ideal world, there should be really no need for an association rule as long as people are actually being honest.
Right.
And judging with integrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's always the ideal and it's always the goal. And when I'm judging, I have my own style and I think judges have a particular...
Yeah, they do.
Dance schools have a style sometimes and judges have a particular style they like. But let's say I have 70 in a competition and a dancer comes out and I think they're just a humdinger. I just think they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'm always saying, thank you, God.
So do I. Thank you, Jesus.
And particularly in a solo competition, it's always nice. I'm saying, please don't go wrong. But when they go wrong in a championship, it's like, oh my God.
And you've loved them up to that.
I love them. Not only love them, but they're just sort of the perfect dancer for me. And everything about them and everything about their execution and their carriage, is exactly what I want.
Or their style, they ooze style.
Yes.
They come out and you could have 20 children in a world and they're all beautiful and they're all exceptional and they're all technically perfect. But one child can come out and you can think, oh my God.
Yeah.
is that's beautifully done. Or just the whole, they just ooze
Yeah,
style.
they do. And I'm not sure, I think you can train dancers, but I think that extra little bit is a bit of magic that, I think that it's just innate, and I think it's just in their body and in their soul, and it's the gift they've been given, and it makes it all worthwhile. It's my dog barking.
Hamish.
Yeah,
It's
he's
a great
protecting me.
name for him. It's an amazing name. He looks like a Hamish.
Well, he's a bit of, he's a redhead, and I just thought it's sort of both a Scottish and an Irish name. And when I gave him that name, people would say, is it Scottish or is it Irish? And then eventually I met a lady and she said, it's so nice that you have a Yiddish name for your dog.
A Yiddish
name, a Jewish name for your dog. And I thought,
yeah, I know.
Oh, wow. So to each his own. But he's well loved and he's
There's
wonderful.
obviously, I must actually find out from my friends who I've become friends with a lot of people since my research who are either survivors or children of survivors, and they all either speak Hebrew or Yiddish, mostly Hebrew. So I must actually ask a friend of mine, Toba, where the Hamish comes from in Yiddish.
Yeah. It's a great name, and he's changed our lives, and can't say enough good things about the breed. So
I never got to the bottom of why did you decide to up sticks and go to San Francisco 30 years ago? Were you a clinical psychologist here in Ireland, or
No.
did you just qualify over?
I actually did my leaving cert in Ireland, and then I went on and started accounting and did the first exams in chartered accounting.
God.
But there were no jobs, Mary, at that time. We were in the thick of a recession. So a principal in one of the primary schools said, well, why don't you come out and teach dancing? So I was waiting to become an accountant. And this principal said, why don't you come and teach my class in the morning? And then another teacher round the corner heard I was doing that, and they said, well, why don't you come out to us in the afternoon? And eventually I was teaching 5 days a week, and it became my full-time job. So I was one of those teachers
in Ireland.
In Ireland. But I also realized as a man, one of the things about being a dance teacher is that it's much like being a school teacher. There's a cycle. Somebody comes into your class at 4, they stay with you for, 18, 22, pick a number, and then they're gone. So there's this revolving door, and there's ups and downs. And I thought, well, how am I going to handle this in my old age, and how am I going to make a living? So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was I got an invitation to come over and set up international touring for dancing in the States. And that opened up a whole new arena of dance for me. And, one of the things about America is that we have what we call ethnic dance. And there are so many cultures here that each culture has their own dance form. And it was only when I was in America and working with all these different ballet companies and dance companies that I thought, well, Ireland is unique in the sense that it's developing its culture all the time. Whereas the other cultures are perhaps not developing at the same rate, or they're dancing traditional dances.
Yeah.
But they're very relaxed by comparison to Irish dancing. So this is our book. Cool. This was done by Carmel Doherty, who's the daughter of Ita Cadwell,
Cora Cadwell. I met Cora Cadwell once.
Right. Cora was the sister of Ita.
Yeah. I met Cora. I knew of Ita, but I met Cora. She was elderly. I met her in at the All Ireland Dancing Championships when they were on in, or was it the World? One of them. It was on in the West County.
Right.
is the word. And I met her, and we were sitting talking for ages. She was a lovely woman, very glamorous.
The Cadwell family are sort of lived and breathed Irish dancing. It's been in their blood, and Ita's husband Tomas was involved in the Irish language. But I'm going to digress for a minute. So this is a good example of what CRN is. So, up in the right-hand corner, at least my right hand, you have probably what was our world, and as you can see, the costumes are kind of glittery. Yes, and up on the left,
and the
costumes are what you'd expect in, if you went into a Kogol or commission event. Down on the left-hand side, you have Carl McCartan, whom you probably spoke with.
He's great. He sent me all these photos.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Well, that was probably a dance drama.
It was the World Championship. I'd imagine it's a dance drama.
Yeah, it was probably a choreography. Speaking of the dance dramas and things, one of the things we've done is we've introduced a competition for composers to write a new set dance.
Yeah, we did that as well. We had a competition for the set dance, and it's really been nice. It is.
Because some of the obviously some of the tunes are
left out. They're playing. And it's nice that they're such wonderful musicians.
Oh, yeah.
It's nice that there's something there to actually appreciate them.
Exactly. Yeah. And to keep
beyond our appreciation and beyond our expressions of gratitude, something that they can look back on and say, I won that, and now everybody is dancing that set.
It's a nice legacy, isn't it, when they're dead and gone? God forgive me, if they're all young musicians, but it is nice when you think of the traditional set dances that we're dancing now. I mean, they're going back in history, and Carlin's music is still being played. And
what does Carl play?
No, not this Carl, but Carlin, the composer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Carolyn. Oh,
yes.
Carolyn. I thought you said Carl.
Well, Carl is a good mystery man. He may have a whole history of composition as well. But I think he's actually a school principal in a school.
He is. Yeah. He was telling me. Yeah, but are there many CRN in Ireland?
It's very big in Ireland. I think it's probably biggest on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So when I say the East Coast, I mean from Wexford up to Dublin.
I saw you had Munster on the previous banner, and I was thinking I hadn't heard of anybody in Munster who were CRN. I have to confess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more up to date now since I live in America with that. But I think when I would think of strongholds for a commission, I would think of Cork and Kerry.
It said Shannon Western region.
Exactly.
And I was trying to think. I wonder who but it's amazing that through Zoom we've managed to find. And you were the first person other than on Commission that I've actually interviewed.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. I'm so privileged.
You're a rebel rouser, Mary. You have to stretch the envelope and.
You have to. I mean, I look at what's happening now between the Middle East and between say Israel. The unity that's after being created there, and it only happened because people talked, because people, one group of people decided to put their hands out and shake hands and just end all problems and now become friends.
Right. And as I said, in the beginning of our discussion, you have to come to something like that with an understanding that the pie is big enough, that it's a win-win.
I think we were always. I think I can't imagine that there was ever any animosity between our organisations, but just that differences of opinions, I suppose, about how the organisation should be run, and that's not unhealthy.
No, it's not. And I think historically, because we're a country that fought for our independence, and we're a country that struggled to keep our language and our music and our history. I think that it's good to keep
nice if we held on to our had a combined love of the Irish dance, which we have.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. I can see it in every way. I can see that my God, I mean, if you were to run a feis on a Sunday and you were to have dancers from Commission, CRN, Cogall, Festival, where and all the organizations, you'd make a lot of money, but you'd be there for a week.
You would be there for a week, yeah.
Danny Doherty or somebody would be even more rich from selling the medals.
Yeah, and also I think that I can't speak for, Commission of the Cogall, but there's enough feis in CRN. You could be out almost every weekend, and I think the same is true in the other organizations. There's no scarcity of competitions.
Yeah.
So, I think everybody has part of our culture and our tradition is our loyalty to the different organizations we grew up in. And that's not going to change.
But it's not bad either. I mean, in another sense, it's actually good that there is loyalty between organizations that you've grown up in.
I think so.
Why did you leave? Say you said you were with Commission. Were you with Commission last, or were you with Commission first?
No, I started Commission and then went Cogall, and then
CRN.
Developed CRN. There was a group of us led by Ita Cadwell.
Were you one of the founding members of CRN?
I am a founding member, yeah.
Oh, so I have one of the founders on.
You do. I'm sort of, yeah.
Oh, I had a feeling you were.
Yeah. I can't say it on the video, but I'm one of the originals.
You just said it.
And it's been very nice because dance has been good to me, and I guess it's been a good relationship. And now I'm identified as a founding member, and I don't pay any dues. And
you feel old when they call you one of the founding members.
I'm an old fart, Mary. It's just it's not good. But it's also nice to be remembered.
I'm one of the founding fathers.
I know.
There should be a bust of you up in what's that place in America called, that Mount?
Oh, Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we won't go that far, but
Mount Rushmore. Statue of Brian Cleary.
Yeah.
next to Lincoln.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm happy enough just to. I think one of the obligations of growing old, of being older and growing old, is to be able to move successfully from being.
To be able to move.
To be able to be involved, and then to be able to create space for other people.
Why did you, before we finish, change? What drew you into clinical psychology from accountancy?
Well, I was working within the arts as a non-profit administrator. That was the job I ended up with in the States. And when you work in non-profit, you get to do all sorts of fun things, and you go to all sorts of great parties and things. And you're primarily there to raise fundraising.
Yeah.
So I was moving with these movers and shakers and having a good time, but I wasn't one of the movers and shakers.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I want to have a house, and if I want to, the thing about nonprofit is it's very glamorous, but it doesn't pay well.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I want, what kind of life do I want? And I've made this transition in my life, moving from Ireland to America, and I was hitting 40, and I thought, well, this is the next. You can either have a nervous breakdown or you can do something productive. The 40-year-old crisis. And I thought, I'm going to go back to school and get my doctorate. And the thing that interested me was psychology, because I had, we've been talking about the good culture of Ireland, but the negative culture and the stereotype is around alcohol as well. And I saw, going back to that issue of loneliness, I saw people who came to America and were really successful. And then I saw people who got lost. And they'd have been better off staying in Ireland where somebody would keep an eye on them. And I went into therapy myself and started looking at research and thought, I'm kind of interested in this. And I've been blessed because I've done 2 careers. Sometimes people don't have a career, they just have a job. And I loved Irish dance, and
it's kind of a natural progression for an Irish dancing teacher. It's also, it's strange, another colleague of mine, Chris Domican, not Chris Domican, where did Chris Domican? Chris, I can't think of her name now for a minute, but she was an English teacher. And it's interesting that she went in and did, what would you call it? A form of psychology as well. And it seems to be a progression for English graduates, or certainly anyone who's done higher level English, to actually go down the road of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And I thought about it myself for a while of actually going down that route. Right. But here in Ireland, there doesn't seem to be a recognized association of psychotherapists.
Yeah.
In the UK there is, and it greatly interests me. I think the idea of clinical psychology and psychology and why people do the things they do. It seems like a natural progression for me, having come out of the study of war and the effects of war,
trauma,
post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, if you think about what we've been talking about, you could say it's all about Irish dance, but in another way, it's all about behaviour.
Yeah.
And how people behave and what their expectations in life are, and what it's like to be disappointed, and
how you cope with the disappointment.
Exactly. Yeah, and sometimes somebody will say to me, "Well, I came 14th in the world." And I said, "Well, that's brilliant, congratulations, and keep dancing." And it's, how about getting 13th next year or something? But how do you keep people interested? Why do people behave in a certain way? And one of the things I'd like to do in the future is sort of, maybe at our convention, is to speak about how people form opinions. And dance judges are constantly making decisions and forming opinions. And even when people are doing it ethically and honestly, there are different things that impact you in your life. There's sort of things like the recency effect of how, if you show a video of a car accident to, say, 6 people,
they'll all
once, and then you ask them certain questions, they'll all have seen the same video, and they may come up with different responses. And I think the same thing happens when you sit down to judge.
Absolutely, you could see the same child, and the same child could be fabulous, but there's something about this child or that child that really gets you.
Or it depends on where you're looking. I mean, I remember once judging an Irish Open. We call our All-Ireland, you call it the All-Ireland, we call it the Irish Open. And I was sitting down judging it, and I came up with my result. My result is announced, and I thought, brilliant, my dancer won, lovely. And then somebody came up to me and said, "What the hell were you thinking?" And I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Did you not see her going wrong in our tradition?" And I said, "No, I never thought." Because I was looking, because experienced dancers can correct themselves like that.
Yeah.
You have to, it's a flick of an eye. The world champion is not going to stop on the stage. They're going to keep going.
Yeah.
And I just was looking over here and looking somewhere else. And in that second, the kid went wrong. Now, it seems like everybody else in the hall saw it.
Except the judges, because the judges...
Except this judge. So stuff happens when you're judging, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And most of the time you're trained, the flicker of an eye, you can just catch something.
But I was asking the likes of I was asking Kathleen and James McLaughlin, who are, you know, I mean, renowned on Commission. They've had some amazing dancers and teams down through the years. But I was saying to them, both of them are school teachers, and I was saying, you know, you go into dancing now, and unless you're lucky enough to have a partner that you teach with, i.e. a husband, a wife, a significant other that you teach with. If
Right.
You're on your own and you pass your TCRG exam for the first time, and you walk in front of a class and you're faced with a myriad of children in the class, all of them bringing their own little baggage with them, and then you have parents, some who may have unrealistic expectations for their children, and they're putting pressure on the child and they're putting pressure on you. I personally think that there should be a course, maybe either annually or biannually, where all teachers can go, where they can learn the pedagogical approaches to dealing within a class, the same as you would if you were going to Mary Immaculate College here in Limerick for teacher training. You have to do pedagogy, and you have to learn how to cope with the distraught parent, or the distraught child, or the child that's presenting in class with problems, and you don't know how to cope with it, or you're in a bad mood and you're trying not to take it out on somebody.
Right.
You know, and I think that is one thing that should be in part of the exam, is that at some stage you do a pedagogical course, and you're taught by somebody who is.
And it can destroy a class, Mary.
Yeah.
It can really destroy a class, particularly if something isn't addressed early on, or if it's not taken care of, and it can be out of innocence. But having that communication having an open communication is a great idea, but not always easy.
No, it's not.
Not always easy. But maybe, with the exam for CRN, they have to write a thesis on a subject to do with Irish culture. But maybe I'll suggest to them they do something on the psychological implications of Irish dance as well, because we are constantly dealing with personalities, and we're dealing with unmet needs and expectations and disappointments
and the pressures one puts on oneself going up on stage, many times not from the parents or from the teachers, but you have unrealistic, I suppose, or a burning ambition to win, and you just, now I know hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, but it's still. But Brian, thank you so very much.
Thank you. It's been lovely to meet you.
It's a pleasure meeting my first CRN.
I know, and if you're I don't know if but maybe you should pop into a CRN fesh, and if I'm at the World, or if I'm at a Commission fesh and it's in Ireland, I'll come over and say hello.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you my phone number so that if you're ever over, we'll meet up and have a chat. It's great to meet the founding father.
Right. Try to behave yourself.
Oh, I'll try. I can't promise anything, Brian.
Take care.
Long lad.
Long-ish.
Bye.
Now,
Bye.